Hello again, it's Bill Doggett, an African-American performing arts historian, early sound archivist dedicated to the preservation, the showcasing, and the storytelling of historic African-Americans in performing arts in early recorded sound. Today we're returning again to the Black Swan label. The Black Swan Record Company was a creation of a Mr. Harry Pace, gifted and industrious African American entrepreneur who had the vision to create a record label for the documentation of excellent and emerging talent at the dawn of the Harlem Renaissance. The Black Swan Record Company existed through about 1926, so the time period of 1919 to 1926. There's some history, there's so much contextualization today about the Black Swan Record Company that I have not shared previously. Firstly, the Black Swan label. The Black Swan label is a dedication, a tribute given to a wonderful historic soprano working in the 1850s, 60s, and early 70s by the name of Elizabeth Taylor Greenfield. Elizabeth Taylor Greenfield was a soprano that was considered to be highly gifted. She is really, in many ways, the first African American soprano to seek a career in classical music. Of course, a career at a time when she was a trailblazer. There were no other African Americans, or very few African Americans, working in classical music during her era, at least vocally. So it's really quite a tribute that Mr. Pace makes to Elizabeth Taylor Greenfield, because it is the label name Black Swan that actually references the name that was given to Elizabeth Taylor Greenfield. Her voice was considered like a swan, and so aptly the name Black Swan as a reference to her. In this particular showcase, we're looking again at the classical red label called the concert series label of Black Swan that Mr. Pace dedicated specifically to classical music and opera. And in this particular showcase, there is so much history to talk about, but we'll focus first on the name of Mrs. Antoinette Guards. Who was Mrs. Antoinette Guards? This is a name that has been lost to time. Mrs. Antoinette Guards is a young soprano working in the 19-teens and 1920s. She is pictured here on the right. She is extraordinarily gifted, and she is informed, her gift, her career, her journey is informed by the lady on the left, the famous, the important, the historic African-American soprano and opera singer at the dawn of the 20th century, Matilda Sarita Joyner Jones. But what's special about this particular session and this storytelling is this. Sarita Jones, also known as the Black Patty, and that name was given to her because her voice and her tessitura was similar to the tessitura of the famous Italian soprano working at the dawn of the 20th century, Adelina Patti. But Sarita Jones was really exceptional. She's legendary for her showcasing and her determination to be a dignified soprano, to showcase her gift, the gift of her classical training and her love of opera. And she was famous for her showcasing of material that was very similar to what Adelina Patti showcased. But it is Sarita Jones that's important to the story of Mrs. Antoinette Guards, because it is the legacy and the legend, if you will, of Sarita Joyner Jones, who's working essentially around the same time, but perhaps a little bit before. Her famous time period is 1880 to about 1913. But Antoinette Guards is working, she's in the Detroit area, in the Midwest. She is a graduate of several music schools, but in particular Chicago Music College, and graduates with an incredible honor that realizes the dream that Sarita Jones could not realize in her time. And that is, she graduated with the Diamond Prize, the Harry Revel Diamond Prize for Operatic Excellence in 1919, right after the end of World War I. And by 1923, Antoinette Guards realizes the dream that Sarita Jones wanted, which was to be an opera singer and be embraced and be part of an opera company. Antoinette Guards is that dream realized. By 1923, she's the first and the only African American opera singer or trained operatic musician to be on the roster of a major opera company, and that opera company was the Chicago Grand Opera, under the direction of yet another soprano, Mary Garden. So the contextualization is really significant, and the history is extraordinary. What does she sing in this, her first recording? She sings the very famous aria from Rigoletto, Caro Nome. Mrs. Antoinette Guards has a beautiful tessitura. She has a wonderful instrument, and this is, in essence, one of the first, if not the very first, recording by an African-American soprano of an opera aria. This is from 1922 on the Black Swan label, made possible by the Black entrepreneur Harry Pace. Let's take a listen.